70s thing going there. I got someone's underwear.
Robert Kennedy, thanks for taking a minute. Simple question.
Tucker, it's good to see you. Listen,
You're a Bitcoin maximalist. You're Bitcoin forever.
I hate this central bank digital currency.
Hey, I don't have all the answers, but together, I know we can find them.
hey everybody, welcome to the show tonight. Happy Monday. Rob Nelson live, coming at you from Balboa Island, Newport Beach. All right, so if you're old as I am, you remember Harrison Ford in Star Wars. It's interesting, right? Mark Harmon. Yeah, nobody remembers Mark Harmon. I mean, honestly, like he had one big role. That was being, Luke Skywalker. He was a horrible Luke Skywalker, right? I mean, it's horrible. Like, honestly, like Harrison Ford wasn't supposed to be the star of Star Wars. Mark Harmon was. And Mark Harmon was like, kind of like, it was sort of you almost didn't believe that he was this guy who was like, had this, hero's journey, this transformative thing to his power. It's sort of like Harrison Ford had it. Harrison Ford had it in the movie and in real life. Harrison Ford became a global movie star. Mark Harmon became basically a nobody. I mean, the only role I can remember him in other than that is he was in, The Fall of the House of Usher, the series based off of Edgar Allan Poe's Fall of the House of Usher. Played like the guy who was, the lawyer guy with a big backstory thing, like kind of a side part in it. Harrison Ford became a global phenomenon. Mark Harmon, a nothing, a zero, nothing. And again, if you're honest, go watch Star Wars. How compelling is Mark Harmon? How compelling is Luke? It's like you get his story, you get the journey, but you're like, you really? Don't buy it. Harrison Ford, like, I buy it. Like, yeah, that's who you are. So then, of course, Indiana Jones and all that, and the rest is history. So Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones, big liberal, fine, good. Again, I'm going to get into this. This thing about having people, I'm adjusting my hat, having people left, right, center. Who cares at this point? We'll get to that. Like, it doesn't really matter where you sit on the political spectrum. It should not define us. Jon Stewart, I'll get to that, basically had a version of this. But Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford, told The Guardian, he doesn't, quote, know of a greater criminal in history than Donald Trump. Okay. And this is because he's failing to address climate change. Okay, sidebar. Climate change has become, climate change is real. The planet's going down. Like, how much of it's us? How much of it's, the mechanics of the universe and, eons of time? I don't know. We're a big part of it. We're eating, raping, devouring the planet 100%. Like, will we destroy it? Well, no, we'll destroy ourselves and it will survive in its own way. But sure, fair enough. But climate change is also not the be all and end all. I mean, climate change is a kind of abstract, long-term thing that you can talk about like for the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. If you're Harrison Ford, great. Yeah, your next generation is fine. Your next 5 generations are fine. If you're trying to put food on the table, if you've got 2 kids, if you've got 3 jobs, like climate change is sort of secondary. You're like, yeah, but I need gas to be cheaper. I need to be able to pay my rent. I got to feed my kids. I got to make sure they get through school. Like, it just doesn't apply. It's like, yes, we're all going to die. So we want a better world. Yeah. So feel good. Put your recycling in the bin that's going to get tossed in the ocean and the dolphins will eat it anyway. Like, at some point, wake up, people. Climate change is not the biggest existential threat of the world. It is probably an existential threat to humanity eventually. But the biggest existential threat we face right now, in the term that we can live in, is that we're devouring ourselves from the inside out. And AI is probably our biggest existential threat because it's going to just get tired of us. So anyway, back to Harrison Ford. Trump doesn't have policies. He has whims. He says it scares the shit out of me. The ignorance, the hubris, the lies, the perfidy. Perfidy, look that one up. He's like, Trump knows better, but he's an instrument of the status quo and he's making money hand over fist. The second part's true. He's making money hand over fist. The notion that he's an instrument of the status quo is almost comical. It's like literally, he's like the status quo literally is like having heart attacks every day. He's so not an instrument of the status quo. And it's kind of ironic that you can accuse someone of being the instrument of the status quo at the same time as that person is being accused of literally disrupting the status quo in every direction possible. He's turned every single thing since the end of World War II, the beginning of the Cold War, the post-World War II kind of economic political system. He's turned it all on its head. He turned media on its head. He turned politics on its head. But he's the instrument of the status quo. It just cracks me up. Which are you? Are you a tool of the status quo? Were you the guy who's literally shoved a stick up its ass and said, fuck you? Like, you can't be both. You just can't be both. Like, the fact that people can accuse him of being both is the sort of evidence that he's not both. He's not a tool of the status quo. He is making money hand over fist. Harrison Ford's right about that. And then he concludes with, I don't know a greater criminal in history. Well, I can think of about 10 off the top of my hat, many who he's been compared to. Hitler, Stalin, Mao. You know, we start with 3 there. How about serial killers? How about Pol Pot and, Korea? I mean, Vietnam. I mean, I don't know. Like, I could go on. Like, you want bigger criminals in history? I mean, is Trump greedy? Yeah. Does he make money hand over fist? Yes. Is he the greatest criminal in human history? Not by a fucking long shot. Not even remotely close. And by definition, if he's the greatest criminal in history and all the people who support him, I guess that makes them like accessories to the crime. So basically half of America, welcome to being accessories to the biggest criminal in history. But it's all about climate change. Again, Harrison Ford's like, we can do it. We can change it. We can fix it. You know what? Go read Neil Stephenson's latest book. I mean, it's a complex problem. And yes, we are ultimately destroying the planet or humanity's ability to live on the planet. But people have much more immediate problems they have to deal with. And Terminal Velocity, by the way, his book about it, climate change. And Ford concludes with, we have to have the political will and the intellectual sophistication that we human beings are capable of change. Well, that's a nice elitist statement. You got the political will and the intellectual sophistication. First of all, 3 out of 4 of those words are huge words. Most people are like, intellectual what? Sophistication what? How about you got to realize most people literally, 65% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Do they want a healthier planet? Of course. Are they trying? Sure. They probably do the recycling thing, doing their good deed, not realizing it makes no difference. Like, it's Gavin Newsom at the, whatchamacallit, French whatever restaurant. like, wow. How about Harrison Ford? You donate 98% of all the money you have to the cause. How about that? How about you just take whatever you're worth and give 98% of it to the cause? Or how about you spend the rest of your life, the last 10 years you got left or whatever, you're in your 80s, simply every single day going out and trying to make average people's lives better who can't afford to have, let me read it again, political will and intellectual sophistication. They simply want to feed their families. They simply want to do what you tried to do and got lucky because you became a movie star. They simply want to survive. How about that? We'll start there. Anyway, I'm not trying to pick on Harrison Ford, but he did have a great conclusion at the end. He said, if you look at the economy, you'll figure out where the commonality is. It's where always was. Rich get richer, poor get poorer. Ain't that exactly right? Well, maybe that would make you realize, since the rich get richer, that would include you, by the way, you and Donald Trump. The poor get poorer, which is true. I've always said this is Left, right's not the issue. It's a class warfare. Black and white isn't the issue. It's a class warfare. It's people with less and people with more. Maybe you'd realize the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. The poor can't afford to fight for the climate change of 3 generations from now. They're simply fighting to make sure they and their future kids and grandkids live. Same way you're fighting for you to stay alive. We're human beings. We fight for survival, and we fight for the survival of our families and our kin. So if you're the poor, you're fighting for that. So if you care about the poor getting poorer, maybe realize the existential crisis is that, not climate change. And Donald Trump, while he might be somebody who is, getting richer hand over fist, is not the biggest criminal in human history. Not by a long shot. Not by any measure you can come up with does he come close to the biggest criminal in human history. All right. Speaking of which, Donald Trump bringing the National Guard to Portland. This has fascinated me because, Portland's had its riots, and I love the left-leaning media is like, oh, it's a peaceful protest. Cars are burning, buildings are burning. That said, they're not like the whole city shut down. You go to Portland, you never see the riots if you didn't want to. Like, it ain't like the whole place is burning. A district court judge, Corinne Immergut, temporarily blocked the Trump administration from sending in the National Guard to Portland. So the government failed to justify what it was doing. So the injunction, quote, will remain in effect until this court issues its final opinion on the merits by Friday, November 7th, this Friday, no later than 5 p.m., very punctual. Basically, the judge said, look, there's no credible evidence that Portland needs to be federalized, that there's a riot, that there's, the protests are out of control and involve, quote, more than isolated or sporadic incidences of violent conduct. No serious injury to federal personnel. And she based it on local law enforcement who said they had it under control. I mean, first of all, it's interesting when, as a judge, you're saying, well, I don't really buy that, these protests are out of control or have been anything other than isolated and, quote, isolated and sporadic incidences of violent conduct. Well, they're not isolated and they're not sporadic. They are violent. They're not widespread. The whole city is not falling apart, the whole city is falling apart, but that's a separate issue. And it's fair to base it on local law enforcement going, the basis for bringing in federalizing the National Guard is that there's a rebellion. She's like, no way does these protests lead to an all-out rebellion. I think that's accurate. I don't think these protests in Portland suggest that there's an all-out rebellion. And the Trump administration was leaning into a legal basis to claim, hey, we got to federalize the National Guard because there's an all-out rebellion. No, it's not an all-out rebellion. Any more than January 6th was an insurrection that would topple the U.S. government. Both sides try to have it their way when they want it. January 6th was not the insurrection that was the rebellion that would end the U.S. government. And Portland's riots are not a rebellion. It's like the democracy's falling apart. Got to nationalize nationalize the state guard. Like, no, Portland's going to be fine. Well, Portland's not going to be fine, but not because there's violent protests around ICE. Portland's not going to be fine because they got a whole lot of policies that don't work. But there's no rebellion. So the judge isn't wrong. There is really no rebellion, and the protests in Portland are, like she said, likely not a rebellion and likely do not pose a danger of rebellion. She's right. 100%. And she's right. The political right should recognize that the same way you didn't want the left to call January 6th a rebellion and insurrection that would topple the government, you're like, yeah, it's a bunch of people who started rioting and acted inappropriately and stormed the Capitol. And there's a whole lot of stuff we don't know. How much was the FBI involved? Who let it happen? Why didn't they deploy that? Why didn't Nancy Pelosi allow the deployment of the National Guard? All that's fair. But it wasn't the end of the U.S. government. It wasn't, we almost toppled America. Nope. And the protests in Portland aren't about to topple Oregon's democracy. Does Trump need to send in the National Guard? No. It's a political power play. He doesn't need to. And this is where I feel like the whole conversation with Donald Trump has to kind of go to the next level. I mean, those who support him and believe in him treat him almost like a god, like he's like a Jesus-like figure. He can do no wrong. And he's doing a lot of wrong. Now, he's also doing a lot of right. He's doing a lot of right. Economically, he's so on track, it's scary. His tariff policy that everyone said would destroy America has not only not destroyed us, it's made us stronger. I've said it before. He's built America's strength economically, politically, united the alliance of NATO, managed to start making a temporary peace in the Middle East, trying to navigate Ukraine and Russia. He's done an enormous amount right. But he does have a lot of hubris. Everything he touches, he thinks is perfect. And he's also, he's profiting. He's selfishly profiting. And that has come at the expense of, well, again, I would personally say the immigration policy is where he is at risk of perhaps doing, in some ways, the greatest harm he can do to America. This notion that you will, and he's losing popularity. And I think it's kind of partly because of the media onslaught against him still, but partly because I do think people have an intuitive sense that it's like, there's a certain hatred that it feels like or just being right. Like, we're not doing enough. Let's round up more people. Let's deport more people. It's sort of like, stop. Just stop. Yes, you said you would remove illegal immigrants from the United States, as you should. Yes, Joe Biden, you let them flood the border and caused a catastrophe. Yes, the balance needs to be reset. You need to get all kinds of bad people out of the country, and you need to get a lot of people out who came in the last couple of years. But you don't need to uproot families, lives, communities. You don't need to be the Gestapo. And that's where Donald Trump may go too far. His hubris may take him too far. Jon Stewart's wrong that he's the biggest criminal in history. He's not wrong that he's profiting hand over foot and that he's got a lot of hubris. And, I don't know that there's any stopping Donald Trump from this path, but Mr. President, if you want to be remembered as a great leader, you won't just be remembered for the accomplishments you made in helping make America stronger, prouder, more economically successful, the world more secure, all of which are huge accomplishments. You'll also be remembered for your compassion and where you recognized where there was a need to balance that with also taking care of those parts of our country and those people in our country who don't need a foot up, they need a humanity. There's a humanity in being a great leader. And your humanity, Mr. President, can come in recognizing people. You have people connected in your world who have been here for decades illegally. You don't just rip them up. That's the closest thing you could be to being a Hitler. You're not a Hitler, but it's the closest you could be for political gain. Because Hitler probably didn't really hate the Jews. It was political. Rip these communities up. Instead, find a way to foster and allow these communities to thrive and remove the bad things, remove the criminal elements, remove the people who've been here less than 5 years. Don't go after the fabric of these communities. That's where you fall down. That's where you will come up short. All right. So now I've got so many angles I want to jump in on here. It's funny, sidebar. I never realized this. The presidents fly on, Air Force One, and it's a 747 now, but it was a 707. Reagan flew the 707 more than any president, and it was decommissioned in 2001. So Clinton flew it, George Bush flew it. It's funny, it was decommissioned 3 days before September 11th. And Reagan's the one who wanted it upgraded to the 747s. Never knew this. Like the old 707s didn't even have a bedroom. It's just nice chairs, not a lot of first class seats. Like um, the new one, the 747s, like literally like you're living in a mansion. But Nixon, Ford, Carter, both Bushes, Bill Clinton all flew on the 707s. There was a conference room, nice chairs, no bedrooms. Sidebar to a sidebar. Hamas continues to try to disrupt peace and fuck the Palestinians. There's a video of Hamas raiding a humanitarian aid truck, which of course they blame Israel for. Not this one, but they literally are blocking the relief coming to civilians. Why? Because A, they don't want the relief to get to civilians. B, maybe they're taking it for themselves. Either way, they could care less how many civilians die. I mean, Hamas is the definition of a cockroach. So, Jon Stewart, if you want to point out like the biggest criminals in history, maybe look at Hamas as like a collective criminal, or maybe the Iranian government. I don't know. The notion that you have sympathy for these terrorists, if you understood the sympathy was because they feel like in a battle with Israel, maybe. But when you realize they terrorize their own population for their own gain to stay in power, that's the definition. Like it's just so disgusting. It's like the definition of abuse. Like you're not really trying to help the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people are tools, toys for you, for your battle against Israel, which is an ideological battle funded by Iran. So it's a religious ideological battle. But I don't know where in that battle it says you are allowed to take all the people you're supposed to protect and say you're fighting for and make them basically cannon fodder. Hamas are a bunch of cockroaches. And everybody out there marching for them, you are accessorizing. You're the accessory to the cockroaches. You're kind of a cockroach yourself. All right. Going back to domestic politics. I know this show's going boop, 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 boop. Bill Maher, who I love because he's an old school liberal. He hates Donald Trump. He's not a fan of Republicans. He's a classic liberal, and he hates the woke. Like he's kind of what's left of the middle. Compared the Democratic Party to Sears. So I grew up shopping at Sears and JCPenney. And he's like, Sears used to, I didn't know this. Sears used to control 50% of the appliance market in the US. And they built the Sears Tower in Chicago, which at the time was the tallest building in the world. And he's like, the Democratic Party is Sears. Like they're going down because nobody knows Sears anymore. Like Sears was half the shopping mall when I was a kid. The Democratic Party has a 63% unfavorability rating. It's their lowest rating in 35 years, which is probably when they started polling. That'd be like 1990, Well, it's not when they started polling, but 63% unfavorable. Stop and think about that. That's a 37% favorable rating. Like, wow. If you're at a 63% unfavorable rating, you're beyond in deep water. You're like sunk. Like basically, your diehards believe in you. Everybody else is done with you. And your entire platform is built on anything Trump does is bad. If you're at a 63% disapproval rating, and the US government is shut down, which again, I'm fine with, by the way. Say it again, haven't noticed, but it's going to start affecting a lot of people. Personally, probably never me. Makes me wonder why I pay $1 in federal taxes because I get nothing for it. How does it look when the Republicans can say, we are willing to open the government as long as there's no conditions? Now you can say, well, Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House, so why don't they open the government? Well, there's this little thing called 60 votes, the filibuster. You can't open the government if you don't get 60 votes in the Senate. And Republicans don't control 60 votes. They control a small majority. So the reason the government can't open is Democrats won't vote yes to open it. They will vote yes if Obamacare subsidies are locked in. I'm not sure. It's like why they dug in on the trans thing. They're dug in on these subsidies. Meanwhile, everybody's getting fucked financially. Like, I don't care. But again, if you were at a 63% approval rating, maybe you could weather that. If you're at a 63% unfavorable rating, I don't think this ends well for you. Like, eventually you're going to open the government and you will get no wins from it. Enter Mandami in New York. That's where he comes in. He's like, I don't really care about either of the political parties. It's sort of like nobody at this point cares about them, about the leaders, the elected officials. He's like, honestly, let me talk about what's a problem for you. You're all paying too much money. Now, is he right about the solution? No. Is he right about the problem? 100%. 100%. Rents, food, cost of living off the charts in New York, in Los Angeles, in every big city, even in like a mid-sized city like Nashville. His solutions probably won't work. Price controls, taking over grocery stores, free transit. Who's going to pay? Well, you tax the people who are already taxed off the planet. They're just going to leave. The rich will leave. The rich will always be okay. Mandami's appeal is that he's addressing what people actually care about, their real problems. I don't hate Mandami. I think he's a bit of a fake. He's like a good-looking, charismatic, came from wealth, kind of hypocritical. Like his home country, like literally kills homosexuals. They don't chop their hands off; they execute them, and you still keep a citizenship there. Like, really? Okay. So much for your beliefs. But he is addressing the core problems that people feel every day, and that's why I think New Yorkers like him. He's going to win. And I think it's why Republicans attack him every day. I mean, if you look at the press conferences, every major Republican press conference, Senate, Congress, whoever, they all talk about Mandami. Like, why? Well, because he's the center of the Democratic Party right now. He's the singular piece that's actually talking about what people care about. And the Republicans are going to say, well, it's a socialist uprising. It's socialism coming to destroy us all. It's so much BS. So let me be really honest. Mandami's going to become the mayor of New York. New York is not going to fall apart. It is not going to turn socialist. It's not going to be the end of the destruction of America any more than Trump was going to be the end of the American Republic. The end of democracy. The insurrection was almost a blow to the heart of America's independence and the freedom of the republic. No. And Mandami's not the end of America. He's not the beginning of a tidal wave of destruction. New York will be just fine. New York's always just fine. New York operates on its own heartbeat. Like, it survived Bill Blasey, who was a socialist mayor. Like, it'll be fine. New York will keep stepping forward. And I think most New Yorkers, like, at the end of the day, will deal with whatever happens. But he's right in that he recognizes there's a core pain point for a lot of New Yorkers, which is life's too expensive. I can't afford food. I can't afford the cost of living. I can not afford my rent. I can't really live at an adequate level, and therefore neither can my kids. He's not wrong about that. Again, I don't think his solutions work. But, this notion on the right that, like, Mandami's, launching us, the commie socialist stuff. I just wish they'd all stop saying it. Even Sean Hannity, love you, Sean, but, the commies are coming. God, I've heard that since before I was born. The commies have been coming forever. Like in the 50s, the whole the whole purge of Hollywood, the whole, McCarthy era was the commies are coming. Ronald Reagan was a commie, by the way. He was an early commie. Then he became a conservative. Mandami said this: I understand if I was one of the leaders of the Republican Party that had led a campaign that promised Americans a lower cost of living and cheaper groceries, and all I could deliver for them was a government shutdown, then I too would be looking to distract in any way that I could from those lack of results. Well, he's wrong that the Republicans caused a government shutdown, but he's right. Trump promised lower prices, better standard of living, dealing with household issues. He hasn't delivered. He also said, I'm going to deal with the immigration crisis. He has delivered, but now he's over-delivering, Mr. President. You are over-delivering. You don't need to figure out how to mass deport 12 million people to prove you could. And at the end of the day, basic, James Carville said it when Clinton was running for president. It's been true ever since. It's the economy, stupid. It's always the economy. Everybody cares about what's most basic to them. My paycheck, my ability to survive, my ability to pay bills, my ability to enjoy my life. It's the economy. It's always the economy for everyone, every time, including for Donald Trump. How much money do I have? It's always about the economy. All right. I am just about out of time, so I want to leave it on this. And I'll be coming back to do the nightcap. We live in really complicated and somewhat troubled times. And the divisions between us are more artificial than real. And Jon Stewart on a podcast the other day said, I have an uncle, I'm not quoting him, but he was sort of like he's kind of right of Hitler. Like, I don't literally think that's what he said, but he implied the guy's so far right. And he's like, why do people think I can't have a relationship with him? He's like, I actually love him. He's an amazing human being. He's called him a three-dimensional human being. He's like, things about him I absolutely love and admire, and I love the heart and soul of him. We just disagree. Why is that not okay? That's where we are. Why is it not okay to love somebody deeply, passionately, convictedly for who they are and still radically disagree with them? If we can't do that, we're done. You got to be able to look at somebody who doesn't agree with you politically and go, all right. And I've got friends and family the same way. We don't agree, but it doesn't change how much we love each other. It doesn't change who we are as people. We just have different beliefs. Sort of like I'm a Packers fan, someone else is a Cowboys fan, someone else is a Giants fan, someone else is a Lions fan. It's okay. I hate the Dodgers. You can love the Dodgers. I'm a Brewers fan. The Dodgers kick the crap out of the Brewers every time. Not a Dodger fan. You can still be my best friend and love the Dodgers. And we can watch the game together. You can go tailgate in Lambeau Field with Vikings and Lions fans, and then you all wear your gear into the stadium and cheer for your team. Like you can say that's sports, that's not life, but it's the same. You can believe in certain ideals and certain ways of doing things, and somebody else can have a different vision. Democrats, Republicans, left, right, it's all okay. Like I said, the left-right divide is really, really not a real divide. It's a class divide. Populism is left and right combined. The reason we think we can't do it is because we demonize Trump is Hitler. That's why I can't. But if you realize Trump isn't Hitler, if you realize a lot of what Trump's doing actually makes sense for all of us, and some of what he's doing makes sense for none of us, we'd all find a common ground. Thank you for watching. I will see you guys on Wednesday.
Meet Rob Nelson, talk show host.
Because you got the 70s thing going there. I got someone's underwear.
Robert Kennedy, thanks for taking a minute. Simple question.
Tucker, it's good to see you.
Listen,
If you're a Bitcoin maximalist, you're Bitcoin forever.
I hate this central